We are looking at Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And what can I say about this? Well, it's a non-spoiler review, but let me try to give the basic structure. Essentially, we're looking at a dystopian society through the POV of a character called Offred, though we don't really know how to pronounce her name, and who she really is kind of obscure. So this dystopia is essentially controlled by a Christian theocracy, although later Atwood in interview says it's not really Christian, but essentially it's a Christian theocracy, and it's taken over the United States. And just how big it is or how much this empire reaches, we don't know. It seems that Canada is a bit of a safe space, but we don't know. If it is really a Christian theocracy, which you would imagine would be radically anti-communist, have they invaded Cuba or the Caribbean? Unclear. So there's a lot of stuff that is not clarified. So what's my judgment? Well, I have to be honest, I think this is kind of very lower tier Stephen King science fiction. People forget that Stephen King does do science fiction, so it's not at the level of The Stand. So I'm a little puzzled why people think this is such a great work, or even a feminist masterpiece. It's really no such thing. In fact, it's highly reactionary, and you'd think from its perspective it would be pro-left-wing. It's not. It's actually very anti-leftist. I guess what she's trying to do is in 1984, something that's very critical of all totalitarian systems, but the world building is very, very weak and extremely incoherent. Now, some of this is intentional, that Offred's perceptions are very fractured, because she lived through a transition period where it went from what you would call, I guess, a normal society in America to this totalitarian regime. So it's about her sort of trying to integrate her past self and current self. And then later we learn a big twist at the end with how we're even reading the story. And I'll say this, the ending is fairly strong. There's a lot of clunky moments, especially with some of the male characters. I can't say too much more than that because, again, it's not spoiler. But I thought that was well laid out, and she did leave enough clues and hints as to why things ended the way they did. And I don't want to give it away, but I do think it ends on a hopeful note, although there's an added narrative at the end, which I think is it's supposed to be funny and a satire. I wasn't laughing. I don't think it was that well done, but still it does provide you some confirmation that Offred's fate is not as pessimistic as it seems at the beginning. But overall, I just found the characters cardboard. The plots was not very interesting. There are some powerful moments, I will grant that, in terms of how she describes this totalitarian society and how it operates, but you will be asking a lot of constant questions. Wait, how does this work? How does that work? What are the rules? Wait, wouldn't this be the case? And wouldn't that be the case? And if you ask those questions too much, then I don't think this is a good work of fiction. But she is a good stylist, and there are moments which are very well laid out. They're very tense. They're very horrifying. So she does get the job done in certain places, and I think it's enough to say it's above average. But I'm really puzzled why people think she's a great writer, why this is a great book. It's not. There is one really solid character, Moira. I think she was very well done. I think she was very, very well written. But the majority of the time, it is kind of a slog. And I will say I have seen a couple of the episodes of The Handmaid's Tale through television. I thought those were pretty effective and those were pretty good. Though again, it does bear some of the same problems in terms of how does this world building really operate in terms of the eyes, the aunts, the commander, and so on and so forth, and what she's using as a metaphor like Scrabble. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you think it through. But I found the adaptation was really strong, and it's actually making me want to look at the film version as well. So I'd say the adapted material is much stronger than the original material, but it is based on something. So she is an okay storyteller. I am recommending The Handmaid's Tale, but I don't think it's all that good. I'm going to give this 7.25. I think it's fine, but if you read Orwell or much better dystopian fiction by Alan Moore, like V for Vendetta was published around the same time, I'd say read that before this. That's a much, much more powerful picture of fascism, quote, taking over a modern state and really warping people's perceptions. But this one just feels like, yeah, kind of just lower tier George Orwell and or Stephen King. And that's my judgment on Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Thank you for listening.